dive into today's episode, I just want to remind you to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. It helps us grow, reach more amazing learners like you, and keep bringing you fresh and fun content every week. So don't forget, like, subscribe, and let's keep this journey going strong. Hello, wonderful idiom explorers, and a very warm welcome back to another exciting episode of Idiom Insights. I'm Emma, your enthusiastic guide, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you again, ready to delve into the truly fascinating and often subtle nuances of some more common English phrases. It's always a pleasure to share this learning journey with you as we navigate the colorful and sometimes perplexing world of English.
And I'm Jack, your co-host and ever-curious word detective, here to help unravel the meanings and perhaps share a chuckle or two as we explore the rich landscape of idiomatic English. It's wonderful to be back in the Idiom Insights studio, Emma, and a big hello to all our fantastic listeners around the world. Thanks for tuning in for another dose of idiom discovery, which we always aim to make both fun and incredibly useful.
It's always a joy, Jack, and I must say, the enthusiasm from our listeners really makes preparing these episodes worthwhile. Today, we've selected 4 incredibly useful and vivid idioms that you'll undoubtedly encounter in everyday English, whether you're reading a book, watching a film, or chatting with native speakers. Understanding these will not only significantly boost your comprehension, but also provide you with more natural and expressive ways to communicate your own thoughts and observations. These phrases, as you mentioned, cover a delightful range: narrow escapes, taking shortcuts, acting unconventionally, and identifying essential components.
A truly excellent and varied mix today, Emma. These are idioms that really add character, color, and depth to conversation, allowing for much more sophisticated communication. Here are the 4 idioms we'll be diving into in this episode of Idiom Insights, and I can already tell they're going to spark some great discussion. First, an idiom for succeeding or escaping by a very narrow margin: by the skin of your teeth, a classic that paints a vivid picture. Second, a phrase for doing something in the easiest, cheapest, or quickest way, often by omitting important steps. Cutting corners, something many of us might be tempted to do. Third, an expression for doing something that is different from what is usual or accepted. Go against the grain, for the independent thinkers out there. And finally, an idiom for an essential part of a larger problem, situation, or solution. Piece of the puzzle, which is so useful when problem solving.
Those are all fantastic and very common idioms, Jack. Each one paints a very clear picture and is used frequently in both formal and informal contexts. So understanding them will be incredibly beneficial for our listeners as they engage in English conversations and encounter these phrases in media of all kinds. Mastering them can really elevate one's fluency.
I couldn't agree more, Emma. They're all very practical and insightful. The kind of phrases that, once you know them, you start hearing everywhere. And before we delve into the intricacies of our first idiom, a quick and sincere request from both of us here at Idiom Insights. If you're finding these episodes valuable for your English learning journey, and you genuinely enjoy our explorations into the fascinating world of idioms, please take a moment to subscribe or follow our podcast on your preferred listening platform.
Yes, subscribing is absolutely the best way to ensure you don't miss any of our future idiom adventures and linguistic discoveries. And if you're feeling extra supportive, and we hope many of you are, a like or a positive rating on your podcast platform truly helps other English learners discover Idiom Insights. We are so incredibly grateful for your engagement and continued support. It really fuels our passion for creating this content and sharing it with you.
It genuinely makes a massive difference, and every bit of support encourages us to keep going. Thank you all for being part of our wonderful community. Right then, Emma, are you ready for our first idiom, which sounds like it describes a very close call indeed?
Let's do it! Our first idiom for this episode of Idiom Insights, as you rightly pointed out, often describes a nail-biting situation. It is by the skin of your teeth.
By the skin of your teeth. This is a strange one, isn't it? Teeth don't have skin, do they? Or at least, not in the way we usually think of skin. What does this idiom mean, Emma?
You're right, Jack. Teeth don't literally have skin, and it's that very oddness that makes the idiom so memorable. The phrase "by the skin of your teeth" is an idiom that means to succeed in doing something, or to escape from a dangerous or difficult situation by a very, very narrow margin, just barely managing it. The skin of your teeth is a purely metaphorical way of describing an incredibly small, almost non-existent amount or layer. So if you achieve something by the skin of your teeth, you almost didn't succeed, and success was achieved by the thinnest possible degree.
So it's about a very narrow escape or a success that was achieved with absolutely no room to spare, a real cliffhanger moment. If you're running to catch a train and you jump on just as the doors are hissing closed, you caught the train by the skin of your teeth. You almost missed it and can probably feel your heart racing.
Precisely. That's a perfect illustration. Or if a student passes an important exam with the absolute minimum passing grade, perhaps getting just the 1 mark they needed to avoid failing, they passed by the skin of their teeth. Any lower, even by a fraction, and they would have failed. It implies a situation where you were perilously close to failure or disaster, and luck might have played a small part too.
It sounds like it often involves a huge feeling of relief afterwards, because you came so incredibly close to not making it. The origin is quite old, isn't it? I seem to recall it has biblical roots, perhaps from the book of Job.
You're absolutely correct, Jack. It's a very old phrase indeed, with a fascinating history. In the King James Version of the Bible, from the book of Job, chapter 19, verse 20, Job, after suffering many afflictions, says, "My bone cleaveth to my skin and to my flesh, and I am escaped with the skin of my teeth." The exact literal meaning of "skin of my teeth" in that original context is debated by scholars, but it has come into common English usage to mean this idea of a very narrow escape or margin of success. It's about that incredibly thin, almost imaginary layer separating success from failure.
So, to give another example, if a company avoids bankruptcy by securing a last-minute loan just hours, or even minutes, before they would have had to close down for good, they survived by the skin of their teeth. The tension must have been unbearable.
Exactly. It emphasizes how perilously close they were to complete failure and the immense relief that follows such a narrow success.
Okay, so to do something by the skin of your teeth means to succeed or escape by a very narrow margin, just barely, often with a sense of drama or luck involved. Ready to hear Mia and Mark use this idiom in a more everyday context?
Let's listen in. I wonder what close call or narrow success they might be discussing. It's always interesting to hear these idioms in action.
Mark, you will not believe what happened to me this morning on my way to work. I nearly missed that incredibly important client meeting we had at 9 a.m.
Oh no, Mia. What happened? You're usually so punctual. That meeting was crucial. The CEO was even there.
I know. Well, first, my alarm didn't go off properly. Then, there was a huge traffic jam on the motorway due to an accident. I was stuck for ages, watching the clock tick by, thinking I was definitely going to be late and make a terrible impression.
That sounds incredibly stressful. So, did you manage to make it on time after all that?
I did, but only just. I ended up taking a completely different route, driving through all these tiny back roads I'd never been on before, and then I had to run from the car park to the office building. I literally walked into the meeting room as the CEO was starting his opening remarks. I made it by the skin of my teeth. My heart was pounding.
Wow, by the skin of your teeth? That's cutting it incredibly fine. I'm so glad you made it, though. It would have been awful to miss it after all your preparation.
That was a perfect example, illustrating the idiom beautifully. Mia described how she only just managed to arrive at her important meeting on time after a series of unfortunate and stressful delays, succeeding by the skin of her teeth, by the very narrowest of margins imaginable. You could almost feel her panic.
Exactly. The idiom perfectly conveyed the extreme closeness of her arrival to the deadline and the fact that she almost didn't make it, despite her best efforts. It emphasized the high stakes and the palpable relief of her narrow success.
It's a very common and vivid idiom for describing a very close call, one that really paints a picture in the listener's mind.
It is indeed. So, next time you or someone you know succeeds or escapes from a difficult situation by the very smallest, almost imperceptible margin, remember the idiom, they did it by the skin of their teeth.
And we'd love to hear about a time you personally achieved something by the skin of your teeth. What was the situation? What were the stakes? Share your nail-biting stories in the comments section below this episode. We're always eager to read them.
Great idea, Jack. Your stories really bring these idioms to life for the whole community. Let's move on now to our second idiom in this episode of Idiom Insights. This one is about taking shortcuts, often unwisely, and can have significant repercussions.
Our second idiom today, and one that often carries a cautionary tone, is cutting corners.
Cutting corners. This makes me think of literally cutting a corner when walking or driving to take a shorter, more direct route. Is the meaning of the idiom related to that idea of taking shortcuts, Jack? Perhaps with similar potential downsides?
You're absolutely on the right track, Emma. The imagery is very direct. To cut corners means to do something in the easiest, cheapest, or quickest way possible, often by omitting important steps, not following the rules or procedures properly, or reducing the quality of the work or materials used. Like taking a shortcut in a race, it might save time or money in the short term, but it often leads to a lower quality result, compromises safety, or even creates significant problems later on.
So it's about sacrificing quality, thoroughness, or even ethical standards for the sake of speed or cost saving. For example, if a builder is constructing a house and uses cheaper, lower quality materials, or rushes through important structural construction steps to save money and finish quickly, they are cutting corners. This could lead to serious, even dangerous problems with the house later, like leaks or instability.
Precisely. That's a classic example. Or if a student is writing an essay, and instead of doing proper research and crafting original content, they just copy and paste large chunks of information from the internet without citing it properly. Or perhaps rely too heavily on AI without critical engagement, they are cutting corners. They might finish the essay faster, but the quality will be poor. Their learning will be compromised, and they could get into serious trouble for plagiarism or academic dishonesty.
It generally has a decidedly negative connotation, doesn't it? It implies that important standards, regulations, or ethical considerations are being ignored, or that the job isn't being done properly due to a desire for expediency or saving money, often at someone else's expense.
Yes, it usually implies a deliberate lowering of standards. While sometimes being efficient and finding clever ways to save resources is good, cutting corners specifically suggests that the efficiency is achieved by compromising something vital, like safety, quality, integrity, or honesty. It's about taking an easier, often shadier path that isn't necessarily the right or responsible path.
So, if a chef in a busy restaurant, under pressure to reduce costs, uses old ingredients that are past their best, or significantly simplifies complex recipes too much to save money and time, they are cutting corners, and the food quality, and potentially even food safety, will likely suffer. Customers would certainly notice.
Exactly. The customers will probably notice the drop in quality, and the restaurant's reputation could be damaged as a result. It's rarely a good long-term strategy.
So, cutting corners means doing something in the easiest, cheapest, or quickest way, often by omitting important steps or reducing quality, which can lead to negative consequences, sometimes severe. Ready to hear Mia and Mark discuss a situation where this might be happening?
Let's listen in. I wonder what task or project might be suffering from these ill-advised shortcuts in their discussion. It's a common temptation in many workplaces, unfortunately.
Mia, I was looking at the budget report for the last quarter, and I noticed that the spending on staff training and development was significantly lower than planned. Do you know why that was?
Yes, Mark, I do. The department was under a lot of pressure to reduce overall expenditure last quarter. So, management decided to postpone some of the planned training sessions and use cheaper, online-only modules for some of the essential compliance training instead of bringing in external trainers.
I see. So, they were trying to save money, but isn't there a risk that by using cheaper, less effective training methods, we're actually cutting corners on something really important like staff development and compliance?
That's exactly my concern. While it might save a bit of money in the short term, cutting corners on training could lead to more mistakes, lower productivity, and even potential compliance breaches down the line. It feels like a false economy. Investing in our staff's skills is crucial.
I completely agree. It's one thing to be efficient with spending, but it's another to cut corners on things that are fundamental to our success and ethical operation. We should probably raise this concern.
That dialogue clearly and effectively illustrates the idiom. Mia and Mark discussed how the company was potentially cutting corners on staff training by opting for cheaper, seemingly less effective online methods to save money in the immediate term, raising valid concerns about the potential for negative long-term consequences for quality, staff morale, and compliance.
Exactly. The idiom powerfully highlighted their concern that important standards and long-term benefits were being compromised for short-term cost savings, which could lead to bigger, more expensive problems later. It perfectly captured the negative implications and risks of such shortcuts.
It's a very common and important idiom for discussing the dangers of sacrificing quality or safety for expediency. A real warning sign when you hear it used.
It is indeed. So next time you see someone or an organization doing a job in a way that sacrifices quality, safety, or proper procedure to save time or money, you can accurately say they are cutting corners.
And we'd love to hear if you've ever seen the negative results of someone cutting corners. What happened? What were the consequences? Share your experiences and cautionary tales in the comments below the episode.
Wonderful idea, Jack. Learning from each other's experiences is so valuable. Let's move on now to our third idiom in this episode of Idiom Insights. This one is about being unconventional, and sometimes courageously so.
Our third idiom for today, celebrating those who dare to be different, is go against the grain.
Go against the grain. This makes me think of wood grain, as you know, and how it's noticeably harder to cut or smooth wood if you go against its natural directional pattern. Is the meaning of the idiom related to that idea of opposing a natural or established direction, Jack?
You've got the imagery perfectly, Emma, and it's a very potent image. To go against the grain means to do or say something that is different from what is usual, commonly accepted, or widely expected by most people within a particular group or society. It means to act in a way that opposes the prevailing customs, widespread opinions, or current tendencies. Just like going against the grain of wood is more difficult and creates friction and resistance, acting against common societal norms or expectations can also be challenging and meet with disapproval.
So it's about being unconventional, nonconformist, or even in some cases, rebellious. If most people in a society believe one thing strongly, but an individual openly expresses a completely different and often unpopular opinion, they are consciously going against the grain.
Precisely. Or if a company in a very traditional conservative industry decides to adopt a radically new and innovative business model that everyone else in that sector thinks is crazy or doomed to fail, that company is going against the grain. It implies choosing a path that is not the standard, easy, or popular one, but one they believe in.
It often suggests a significant degree of courage, conviction, or independent thinking, doesn't it? To be willing to go against the grain means you are not afraid to be different, to stand out, or to challenge the status quo, even if it makes you unpopular, faces resistance, or leads to criticism.
Yes, it often does. And it can be a lonely path at times, while it can sometimes mean just being contrary for the sake of it or being deliberately difficult. More often, it implies a principled stand, a unique vision, or a deeply held perspective that doesn't align with the majority. It can be a very positive thing if it leads to important innovation, social progress, or positive change, but it can also be a difficult and isolating journey for the individual.
So, if an artist, for instance, creates work that is completely different from the popular styles and aesthetic trends of their time, and deliberately challenges conventional artistic tastes and norms, they are truly going against the grain and paving their own unique way, potentially influencing future generations.
Exactly. They are not following the crowd. They are forging their own path, sometimes against considerable opposition.
So, to go against the grain means to do or say something different from what is usual, accepted, or expected, often bravely opposing prevailing customs, opinions, or trends. Ready to hear Mia and Mark use this idiom to describe someone?
Let's listen in. I wonder who might be choosing an unconventional path or expressing a dissenting opinion in their discussion. It takes a certain kind of character.
Mark, I was talking to my cousin Sarah the other day. You know, she just graduated with a top degree in finance, and everyone in her family expected her to get a high-paying job in a big investment bank in the city.
Oh yes, a finance degree from that university usually leads straight to a corporate career. So, has she landed a great job with one of the big firms?
Well, that's the interesting part. She told me she's decided not to go down that path at all. Instead, she's going to join a small nonprofit organization that works on sustainable development projects in rural communities. The pay is much lower, and it's certainly not the typical career path for a finance graduate.
Wow, that's a very different choice. So she's completely going against the grain of what everyone expected of her and what most of her peers are probably doing?
Exactly. Her parents were a bit shocked at first, I think, because they had certain expectations. But Sarah said she feels much more passionate about making a direct positive impact on people's lives than about just making a lot of money. She knows it's an unconventional choice, but she feels it's the right one for her. She's always been one to go against the grain if she believes in something.
That dialogue beautifully and clearly illustrates the idiom. Mia described how her cousin Sarah chose a decidedly unconventional career path with a nonprofit organization, a choice which went completely against the grain of typical expectations for a top finance graduate and her family's, and perhaps society's, assumptions.
Exactly. The idiom powerfully highlighted Sarah's decision to do something significantly different from what was usual or widely accepted, driven by her own deep-seated passions and personal values, even if it meant choosing a less traditional, less understood, or financially rewarding path initially.
It's a very common and insightful idiom for describing nonconformist, independent, or even pioneering actions and choices.
It is indeed. So next time you see someone doing something that is markedly different from what is generally accepted or expected, perhaps challenging norms, you might say they are going against the grain.
And we'd love to hear about a time you or someone you admire decided to go against the grain. What did you or they do? And what was the motivation? Share your experiences and inspiring stories in the comments below the episode.
Wonderful idea, Jack. Those stories can be truly uplifting. Now, we've arrived at our fourth and final idiom for this episode of Idiom Insights. This one is about components of a larger whole, often a complex one.
Our final idiom for today, and one that often pops up in problem-solving or investigations, is piece of the puzzle.
Piece of the puzzle. This immediately makes me think of a jigsaw puzzle, where each individual, often uniquely shaped piece is absolutely essential to complete the whole picture and see the final image. Is that the core idea behind this idiom, Jack?
That's a perfect analogy, Emma, and it captures the meaning with great precision. A piece of the puzzle refers to one part, element, fact, or piece of information that is essential for understanding or solving a larger, more complex problem, situation, mystery, plan, or even understanding a person's motivations. Just like each piece in a jigsaw puzzle is needed to see the complete image, each piece of the puzzle in an idiomatic sense contributes crucially to the overall understanding or eventual solution.
So it's about an individual component that is crucial, perhaps indispensable, to understanding the bigger picture or achieving a complete solution. If detectives are investigating a complex crime and they find a new clue, like a fingerprint or a witness statement, that clue might be a vital piece of the puzzle that helps them understand what happened, who was involved, and how events unfolded.
Precisely. Or if scientists are trying to understand a complex natural phenomenon, such as climate change or a new disease, each new research finding, discovery, or data point they gather can be another crucial piece of the puzzle, gradually helping them to build a more complete and accurate theory or model. It implies that the overall situation is multifaceted and requires many different elements to be understood or resolved effectively.
It often suggests that you don't have the full picture yet, that there are still gaps in your understanding, but you are actively gathering the necessary components or information. Finding one important piece of the puzzle might then lead you to look for the next one or show you where other pieces might fit.
Yes, absolutely. It can refer to a missing piece that is desperately needed to make sense of everything, or a piece that has just been found and helps to clarify things significantly, perhaps connecting other previously disparate pieces of information. For example, his strange behavior was confusing for a long time, but learning about his difficult childhood experiences was a key piece of the puzzle in understanding his adult personality.
So it's fundamentally about how individual elements, sometimes seemingly small on their own, contribute to a larger, often complex, and interconnected whole.
Exactly. Each piece, however small it might seem in isolation, is significant in revealing the complete picture or solving the overarching problem.
So, a piece of the puzzle is an essential part or piece of information needed to understand or solve a larger, complex problem or situation, bringing clarity where there was confusion. Ready to hear Mia and Mark use this idiom in their conversation?
Let's listen in. I wonder what complex situation or baffling mystery they might be trying to understand or piece together. These kinds of discussions are always intriguing.
Mark, the management team has been trying to figure out why our new product sales have been so much lower than projected in the southern region. They've looked at the marketing campaigns, the pricing, the competitor activity, but they still can't quite pinpoint the main reason for the shortfall.
That is a puzzle. If the product is selling well in other regions, there must be something specific to the southern region that's affecting sales there. Have they considered local distribution issues or perhaps cultural preferences?
They've looked into distribution, and it seems okay. But I was just talking to a colleague who used to work in our southern sales office, and she mentioned something interesting. She said that our main competitor in that region launched a very similar product just a week before ours, with a very aggressive local advertising campaign that we weren't fully aware of.
Really? A similar product launched just before ours with strong local advertising? Mia, that sounds like it could be a very important piece of the puzzle. If customers in that region were already exposed to a similar product from a competitor, it could explain why our launch didn't have the impact we expected.
That's what I thought. It's just one piece of the puzzle, of course, but it might be a crucial one that the management team hasn't fully considered. I'm going to pass that information on to them.
That dialogue perfectly and very realistically illustrates the idiom. Mia identified a new piece of information, the competitor's early and aggressive product launch, as a potentially crucial piece of the puzzle that could help explain the unexpectedly low sales in the southern region. This new information significantly contributes to the understanding of the larger, complex problem the company was facing.
Exactly. The idiom effectively highlighted how this specific detail, when added to other existing information and analysis, could help to complete the picture and lead to a much better, more nuanced understanding of the overall market situation in that region.
It's a very common and highly insightful idiom for describing the components of a complex issue, investigation, or project. It really helps to frame the search for understanding.
It is, indeed. So, next time you are trying to understand a complex situation or solve a challenging problem, and you find a key piece of information or a crucial insight, remember it might be an important piece of the puzzle.
And we'd love to hear about a time you found a crucial piece of a puzzle. What mystery or problem were you trying to solve? How did that one piece change your understanding? Share your stories of discovery in the comments below this episode.
We always appreciate reading your comments and insights, as they add so much to our community. Well, Jack, we've explored 4 more really useful, highly descriptive, and commonly used idioms in this episode of Idiom Insights. It feels like we've added some valuable tools to our listeners' linguistic toolkits.
We certainly have, Emma. It's been another fascinating journey through the English language. Just to recap for everyone tuning in to Idiom Insights today, and for those who might need a quick reminder, we learned
by the skin of your teeth, meaning to succeed or escape by a very narrow, almost unbelievable margin.
Cutting corners, meaning to do something in the easiest, cheapest, or quickest way, often by dangerously omitting important steps or reducing quality.
Go against the grain, meaning to do or say something different from what is usual or generally accepted, often bravely opposing prevailing customs or popular opinions.
And piece of the puzzle, referring to an essential part or piece of information that is critically needed to understand or solve a larger, complex problem or situation.
4 more fantastic and practical additions to your English idiom collection. Remember, dear listeners, the best way to truly master these expressive phrases is to actively listen for them in real-life conversations, in films, in books, and in media, and then to gain confidence by consciously trying to use them yourself in appropriate contexts. Don't be shy.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to experiment with them in your speaking and writing. The more you use them, the more comfortable and fluent your English will become, and the more you'll be able to express nuanced meanings, humor, and a deeper understanding of the language. It's a key step to sounding more natural.
And if you enjoyed learning with us today, and we sincerely hope you did find this session both enjoyable and beneficial, please consider giving this episode of Idiom Insights a like and leaving us a positive review on your podcast platform of choice. Your support truly helps us reach more learners around the globe and continue creating this content for you.
And make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button for Idiom Insights so you don't miss any of our future episodes, where we'll continue to unravel the wonderful, sometimes witty, and always fascinating world of English idioms together. We have many more planned.
Thank you all so very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure exploring these intricate and useful phrases with you, our dedicated community of idiom explorers.
Keep learning, keep listening, keep practicing, and we'll talk to you again next time on Idiom Insights. We look forward to it.
Goodbye, everyone, and happy idiom hunting!
See ya. Take care.